A stranger's kindness. The clock on the wall of Rosie's diner ticked in a slow, steady rhythm, each second dragging longer than the last. Lily Harper stood behind the counter, absently rearranging a stack of clean napkins for the third time that hour. Her feet throbbed from hours of rushing between tables, but she forced herself to push through the discomfort. It was a quiet night, and quiet nights meant fewer tips. Every dollar mattered when you were the sole provider for your little brother, Jake. The bell above the door jingled, breaking her thoughts. Instinctively, Lily turned toward the entrance. A man in a crisp navy suit strode in, his polished shoes clicking against the tiled floor. He was tall, with sharp features, and carried an air of authority. He didn't glance around or acknowledge her presence, instead making a beeline for a booth in the corner. "Coffee. Black," he said curtly, without lifting his eyes from the glowing screen of his phone. Lily nodded, suppressing a sigh. "Coming right up," she replied, her voice tinged with forced cheerfulness. As she poured his coffee, she stole a glance at him. The lines on his face suggested someone who carried heavy burdens. His fingers flew across his phone's screen, typing furiously. Was he a businessman? The lawyer? His tailored suit and expensive watch hinted at a life of success, but his demeanor was distant, as though the weight of the world rested on his shoulders. Setting the steaming cup in front of him, Lily said, "Let me know if you need anything else." He murmured a distracted thanks, before returning to his work. The doorbell jingled again, this time more hesitantly. Lily looked up to see a boy of about 12 standing in the doorway. His clothes were threadbare, hanging loosely on his thin frame, and his face was smudged with dirt. He looked around the diner, his wide brown eyes taking in the warm interior with a mix of hope and uncertainty. "Hi there," Lily greeted gently, stepping out from behind the counter. "Are you hungry?" The boy nodded but didn't speak. He clutched a small, crumpled backpack to his chest, as if it held everything he owned. Lily's heart ached for him. She'd seen her fair share of hard times growing up, but nothing like this. "Why don't you have a seat?" she offered, gesturing to a booth by the window. The boy hesitated but eventually slid into the seat. Lily glanced at the near-empty counter. There was only one sandwich left, a turkey club she'd made earlier for herself. Her stomach grumbled at the thought of giving it away, but she quickly pushed the feeling aside. "Be right back," she said, grabbing the plate from the counter. When she placed the sandwich in front of the boy, his eyes widened in disbelief. "For me?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Lily smiled warmly. "Of course. Eat up." The boy didn't need to be told twice. He dove into the food with an eagerness that tugged at Lily's heart. She leaned against the counter, watching him eat, when the man in the suit spoke up. "Do you always give away free food?" he asked, his tone more curious than accusatory. Startled, Lily turned to face him. His phone was finally set aside, and he was watching her with an arched brow. "Not usually," she admitted, "but I couldn't let him go hungry." The man studied her for a moment, then nodded approvingly. "Kindness is rare these days." Lily shrugged, suddenly self-conscious. "It's just a sandwich." "It's more than that," he said cryptically, picking up his coffee. The boy finished eating and approached the counter, his eyes shimmering with gratitude. "Thank you, miss," he said. "I haven't eaten in 2 days." Lily felt a lump rise in her throat. "You're welcome. Do you have somewhere to stay tonight?" He hesitated, glancing at the door. "Not really. I usually sleep in the park." The man in the suit frowned, his earlier indifference replaced with concern. "That's no place for a child," he muttered. Before Lily could respond, he stood up and walked over to the boy. "What's your name?" he asked. "Daniel," the boy replied softly. "Well, Daniel," the man said, pulling out his wallet. "How about we find you somewhere safe tonight?" Daniel's eyes widened, but he shook his head. "I don't want to be a bother." "It's not a bother," the man insisted. "Come on." Lily watched in astonishment as the man guided Daniel out of the diner, promising to return shortly. The bell jingled behind them, leaving her standing alone, her mind racing with questions. Who was this man? And why did he care so much about a boy he'd just met? Little did Lily know, this encounter was only the beginning of a story that would change all their lives forever. A bridge between worlds. The diner felt eerily quiet after the man and Daniel left. Lily busied herself cleaning tables, her mind wandering. There was something magnetic about the suited man. His gestures were deliberate, and his voice carried a calm authority that made her wonder about his life. She could tell he wasn't the type to frequent small diners or go out of his way for strangers. Yet tonight, he'd surprised her. The doorbell chimed again, and Lily's head snapped up. The man was back, alone this time, his phone tucked into his pocket. His sharp features softened as he approached the counter, looking at Lily with a mixture of curiosity and something else she couldn't quite place. "Everything okay?" she asked, trying to sound casual. "Daniel's fine," he replied, pulling out a chair at the counter. "I dropped him off at a shelter nearby. They'll make sure he's fed and safe for the night." Relief washed over Lily. "That's good to hear. Thanks for helping him." The man shrugged. "It's the least I could do." He paused, studying her. "You didn't have to give him your food, you know. Not everyone would." Lily blushed, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. It didn't feel like a choice. He was hungry. "I know what that's like." His brow furrowed slightly. "You know what it's like to go hungry." She hesitated. Opening up to a stranger felt risky, but there was something disarming about him. "When my parents died, my brother Jake and I were on our own. We've had to scrape by since I was 19. Some days, there just wasn't enough to eat. It's better now, but I haven't forgotten." The man leaned back, his expression thoughtful. "You're raising your brother by yourself." Lily nodded. "He's in high school now. Smart kid, too. Wants to be an engineer. I work double shifts here to make sure he has what he needs." A flicker of admiration crossed his face. "That's impressive. A lot of people would have given up." "Giving up's not an option," Lily replied firmly. "Not when someone's counting on you." The man smiled faintly, extending his hand. "Ethan Grayson." She shook his hand, surprised by the warmth in his grip. "Lily Harper." "Well, Lily Harper," Ethan said, leaning forward slightly. "Do you believe in second chances?" The question caught her off guard. "I suppose I do." "Why?" Ethan hesitated, as if choosing his words carefully. "Because I think that's what tonight was, a second chance. For me, for Daniel, maybe even for you." Lily tilted her head, intrigued. "What do you mean?" Ethan glanced around the empty diner, his voice dropping slightly. "I wasn't supposed to be here tonight. I was supposed to be at a corporate gala, networking with people I don't particularly like for a job I'm not sure I believe in anymore. But I ended up here instead." "Why?" Lily asked, genuinely curious. "I don't know," Ethan admitted. "Maybe fate. Maybe something bigger. All I know is, when I saw Daniel walk in, it reminded me of where I came from." Lily's eyes widened. "Where you came from?" He nodded, a distant look in his eyes. "I wasn't always this guy in a suit. I grew up in a rough neighborhood, the kind of place people try to escape from. My parents worked 3 jobs between them, and we still struggled. If it hadn't been for one person, a teacher who saw potential in me, I don't know where I'd be." Lily leaned on the counter, captivated. "What did they do?" "They gave me a chance," Ethan said simply. "Helped me get a scholarship, mentored me through college. And now, here I am, running a company. But lately, I've been wondering if I've lost sight of what matters." Lily nodded slowly. "It's easy to get caught up in survival. You forget what you're fighting for." Ethan smiled wryly. "Exactly. But tonight reminded me. That boy, Daniel, he's where I was years ago. And you're like the teacher who saved me, giving him a chance when no one else would." Lily felt a lump rise in her throat. "I'm just doing what I can." "Sometimes that's enough," Ethan said. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a sleek black card, sliding it across the counter. Here. Lily picked up the card, her brows furrowing as she read the embossed text. Grayson Ventures. My company, Ethan explained. If you ever need help, financially, professionally, whatever, call me. And tell Jake to keep chasing that engineering dream. There's always room for smart kids in my field. Lily stared at the card, her mind racing. I don't know what to say. Say you'll use it if you need to, Ethan replied, standing. And don't lose sight of your own dreams, either. Before Lily could respond, Ethan dropped a generous tip on the counter and walked out into the night, leaving her holding the card like it was a lifeline. She stared after him, her thoughts a whirlwind. Who was this man who had stepped into her life so unexpectedly? And could his offer really be the second chance she and Jake so desperately needed? As the neon lights flickered outside the diner, Lily couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't the end of their story, only the beginning. The ripple effect. The next morning, Lily awoke to the sound of her alarm clock blaring. Her small, one-bedroom apartment was bathed in the pale light of dawn, filtering through the thin curtains. She groaned as she rolled out of bed, her body still aching from the previous night's shift. After a quick glance at the clock, she padded into the kitchenette, where her younger brother Jake was already sitting at the table, munching on a bowl of cereal. "Morning, Jake," she said, stifling a yawn. "Morning," he replied, looking up from his textbook. His dark hair was messy, and his eyes were focused on a complex diagram of circuits. "Did you get home late?" "Yeah," she admitted, pouring herself a cup of coffee. "It was a long night." Jake glanced up, concern flickering across his face. "You've been working too hard, Lily." She gave him a tired smile. "Hard work pays the bills, remember?" He didn't reply, but the crease in his brow deepened. Lily hated that he worried about her, but she couldn't help it. He'd been through so much already, and she was determined to give him a stable life, no matter how much it took out of her. As she sipped her coffee, her mind wandered to the events of the previous night. Ethan Grayson's sleek business card still sat on the counter where she'd left it. She picked it up, running her fingers over the embossed text. "What's that?" Jake asked, nodding toward the card. Lily hesitated. "It's from a customer at the diner. He owns some big company and offered to help if we ever needed it." Jake raised an eyebrow. "Help? Like, what kind of help?" "I'm not sure," she admitted, but he seemed genuine. Jake leaned back in his chair, studying her. "You're not thinking of calling him, are you?" "I don't know," Lily said honestly. "It feels strange." But he didn't seem like the kind of guy who makes empty promises. Jake shrugged, returning to his textbook. "Just be careful, okay? People like that don't usually give something for nothing." Lily nodded, tucking the card into her pocket. She wasn't sure what she'd do with it yet, but something about Ethan's words had stuck with her. Later that day, Lily headed back to the diner for another shift. As she wiped down tables and refilled coffee cups, her thoughts kept drifting to Ethan and Daniel. She couldn't help but wonder what had happened to the boy. Was he still at the shelter? Did he have anyone looking out for him? The memory of his wide, grateful eyes tugged at her heart. The bell above the door jingled, snapping her out of her thoughts. She looked up, expecting another regular, but her heart skipped a beat when she saw Ethan Grayson standing in the doorway. This time, he wasn't alone. Daniel stood beside him, looking cleaner and more confident than he had the night before. "Hey," Ethan greeted, walking up to the counter. "Mind if we sit?" "Of course not," Lily said, trying to hide her surprise. She led them to a booth and brought over menus, though Ethan waved them away. "We're not here to eat," he said with a small smile. "I just wanted to update you." Lily slid into the seat across from them, her curiosity piqued. "Update me on what?" "Daniel," Ethan said, glancing at the boy. "After I dropped him off last night, I couldn't stop thinking about his situation. I spent the morning making some calls, and we found a temporary foster placement for him. It's not perfect, but it's better than the streets. Lily's heart swelled with relief. That's amazing. Daniel shifted in his seat, his cheeks flushing. I told Mr. Grayson I didn't need all this, but he wouldn't listen. Ethan chuckled. You're too young to be this stubborn. Lily smiled at their interaction. Daniel, you deserve a safe place to stay. Don't feel guilty about accepting help. The boy nodded, though he still looked uncertain. Ethan leaned forward, his expression turning serious. There's more to this, though. Last night made me realize something. I've been so focused on growing my business that I've forgotten the importance of giving back. That changes now. Lily tilted her head. What do you mean? I'm starting a program, Ethan explained. A mentorship initiative for kids like Daniel, kids who need a hand to get back on their feet. It'll provide resources, education, and opportunities they wouldn't otherwise have. And I want you to be part of it. Lily blinked, stunned. Me? Why? Because you're the kind of person who makes a difference, Ethan said simply. You've lived through hard times, and you know what it takes to survive. But more than that, you care. People like you are the heart of a program like this. Lily's mind raced. She'd never imagined herself in a role like that, but the idea filled her with a sense of purpose she hadn't felt in years. I don't know what to say. Say you'll think about it, Ethan said, sliding a folder across the table. This has all the details. There's no pressure, but I think you'd be a great fit. She opened the folder, scanning the neatly organized pages. The program was ambitious, covering everything from after-school tutoring to job training. Her heart beat faster as she realized how many lives it could change. I'll think about it, she said, meeting Ethan's gaze. Thank you for believing in me. He smiled. Sometimes, all it takes is one person to believe. I learned it the hard way. As they left the diner, Lily couldn't shake the feeling that her life was about to change. The weight of her struggles felt a little lighter, and for the first time in years, she dared to hope for something better. Building bridges. A week passed, but Ethan Grayson's proposal remained a constant thought in Lily's mind. The neatly printed folder sat on her small dining table, untouched but ever-present, a symbol of a possibility she had never considered. Jake, ever the practical one, had raised questions about her sudden involvement with a stranger's ambitious project, but even he couldn't deny the spark of excitement he saw in her eyes whenever she talked about it. On a quiet Thursday evening after her shift, Lily found herself sitting at the table, the folder open before her. The words swam on the page: mentorship programs, life skills training, career placement assistance. It was everything she wished had been available when she was struggling to find her footing after her parents' deaths. Could she really contribute to something so grand? Jake shuffled into the room, a notebook tucked under his arm. He glanced at the folder and then at Lily. Still thinking about it? She nodded, chewing on her lip. It's a big commitment, Jake. I don't want to mess it up. He sat down across from her, setting his notebook aside. You're the most responsible person I know. You've been holding this family together for years. If anyone can do this, it's you. Lily's heart swelled at his words. She reached across the table, squeezing his hand. Thanks, Jake. That means a lot. Well, he said, grinning, if it works out, maybe you'll have some time to breathe. I can even pick up some part-time work to help out. She shook her head firmly. Your job is to focus on school. Engineering isn't easy, and you're going to need all the time you can get. Jake laughed. Fine, but only if you promise to stop doubting yourself. The next day, Lily decided to take a leap of faith. She called the number on Ethan's card, her heart pounding as it rang. Grayson Ventures, a crisp voice answered. Hi, this is Lily Harper. I spoke with Ethan Grayson about his mentorship program. Ah, Ms. Harper, the voice said warmly. Mr. Grayson mentioned you. Let me transfer you to him. Moments later, Ethan's voice came through the line. Lily, I was hoping you'd call. I've been thinking about your offer, she said, her voice steady. And I'd like to help. Fantastic. Ethan said, "I knew you'd be perfect for this. Can you come by the office tomorrow? We'll go over everything and get you started." Lily agreed, though nerves twisted in her stomach. Ethan's office was nothing like the small, cluttered diner where Lily spent most of her time. The towering glass building gleamed in the sunlight, and the lobby was sleek and modern, filled with people who looked like they belonged in magazines. Lily felt out of place in her simple blouse and jeans, but she reminded herself why she was there. Ethan greeted her personally, his warm smile putting her at ease. "Come on in," he said, leading her to a spacious conference room. They spent the next 2 hours going over the program. Ethan's vision was ambitious, but it was clear he had put significant thought into every detail. He explained how the program would partner with local schools, shelters, and community organizations to identify at-risk youth. Mentors would be matched based on their skills and experiences, ensuring each child received the guidance they needed. "What do you think?" Ethan asked, leaning back in his chair. Lily took a deep breath. "It's incredible. I can't believe I get to be part of something like this." "You're not just part of it," Ethan said. "You're the heart of it. Your story, your empathy. It's what will make this program work." They discussed her role in detail. Lily would start as a mentor, working directly with a group of teens, while also helping shape the program's day-to-day operations. It was daunting, but the challenge excited her. As they wrapped up, Ethan handed her a packet of paperwork. "Take your time with this. Once you're ready, we'll officially bring you on board." Lily dove into her new responsibilities with a determination she hadn't felt in years. Her first group of mentees was a diverse mix of teenagers, each with their own struggles. There was Maya, a shy girl who dreamed of being a writer but lacked confidence. Marcus, an outspoken boy with a knack for mechanics but no one to guide him. And Emily, whose tough exterior masked a deep fear of failure. Lily spent hours listening to their stories, encouraging them to open up about their dreams and fears. She drew from her own experiences, sharing how she had overcome adversity. Slowly, she saw the walls they had built begin to crumble. But it wasn't without challenges. One evening, Marcus skipped a session, and Lily found herself driving to his neighborhood, worried about his absence. She found him sitting on the steps of an old apartment building, his face clouded with anger. "What's going on, Marcus?" she asked, sitting beside him. He shrugged. "What's the point? No one's ever cared before." "I care," Lily said firmly, "and I'm not giving up on you." He looked at her, skeptical but touched by her sincerity. "You don't even know me. I know you're smart and capable," she said, "and I know that giving up won't get you where you want to be." After a long silence, Marcus nodded. "I'll come back." Weeks turned into months, and the program began to take shape. Ethan was heavily involved, often stopping by to check on the kids and offer his own advice. His connection with Daniel deepened, and the boy blossomed under his mentorship. For Lily, the work was exhausting but deeply rewarding. She watched as her mentees began to believe in themselves, taking steps toward the futures they had once thought impossible. One evening, after a particularly successful workshop, Ethan pulled her aside. "You've done amazing work, Lily," he said. "This program wouldn't be where it is without you." She smiled, her heart full. "It's not just me. It's all of us." Ethan nodded, his gaze steady. "Still, you've changed lives. Don't ever forget that." As she drove home that night, Lily thought about how far she had come. She wasn't just surviving anymore. She was building something that mattered. And for the first time in years, she felt truly alive. Testing the waters. As the program expanded, the weight of its success began to press on Lily's shoulders. While she reveled in the progress her mentees were making, she often found herself lying awake at night, questioning her ability to handle the growing responsibilities. One such night, after tossing and turning, she finally gave up on sleep and slipped out of bed. Sitting at the tiny desk in her apartment, she pulled out a notebook and began to jot down her thoughts. Writing had always been a way for her to process her emotions, and tonight, Her pen seemed to move on its own. "Am I enough for this?" she wrote. "These kids deserve the best, and I'm just me, a waitress with no fancy degrees or big accomplishments. What if I fail them?" A soft knock on her bedroom door interrupted her spiral. "Lily, you okay?" Jake's voice came through. She sighed, closing the notebook. "Yeah, just couldn't sleep." Jake poked his head in, his hair disheveled from sleep. "Wanna talk about it?" Lily hesitated, then gestured for him to come in. He sat on the edge of her bed, looking at her with that calm, perceptive expression he'd always had. "It's the program," she admitted. "Sometimes I feel like I'm in over my head, like I'm not qualified to be doing this." Jake frowned. "Why would you think that? You've been through more than most people ever will. If anyone understands these kids, it's you." "But what if that's not enough?" she pressed. "What if they need more than I can give?" Jake leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. "Lily, you've already given them something no one else has. Hope. You've shown them that someone cares, that their lives matter. That's huge." She smiled softly, his words easing some of her doubts. "When did you get so wise?" "I learned from the best," he said, grinning. The next morning, Lily arrived at the mentorship center early, determined to push past her insecurities. Ethan was already there, reviewing plans for an upcoming community outreach event. "You're here early," he noted, looking up from his laptop. "Couldn't sleep," she admitted. He gestured for her to sit. "Want to talk about it?" Lily hesitated, then decided to be honest. "Sometimes I feel like I'm not good enough for this, like I'm just pretending to know what I'm doing." Ethan leaned back in his chair, studying her. "You know, I feel like that sometimes too." She blinked, surprised. "You? Mr. Corporate Mogul." He chuckled. "Success doesn't erase self-doubt. When I started my company, I was terrified. I thought, what if I fail? What if everyone realizes I'm just some kid from a poor neighborhood who got lucky? But then I realized something. Fear is normal. It means you care." Lily considered his words, a flicker of understanding dawning. "So you just push through it." "Exactly," Ethan said. "And you're doing the same. You've already made a difference, Lily. Don't let doubt take that away from you." In the weeks that followed, Lily poured herself into the program with renewed determination. She organized workshops, coordinated with local schools, and even managed to secure funding from a local business owner who had been moved by her story. Her mentees continued to thrive. Maya submitted her first short story to a local contest, earning an honorable mention. Marcus began shadowing a mechanic at a nearby auto shop, his confidence growing with every success. Emily, once guarded and distrustful, started to open up, revealing a sharp wit and a talent for design. But the most unexpected transformation came from Daniel. Under Ethan's mentorship, the boy had not only stabilized, but also begun to excel. He was attending school regularly, and his grades were improving. One afternoon, Daniel approached Lily after a session. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course," she said, setting down the papers she'd been reviewing. "How did you do it?" he asked. "How did you keep going when things were so hard?" Lily paused, her heart aching at the vulnerability in his voice. "Honestly, it wasn't easy. There were days when I wanted to give up. But I had Jake, and I couldn't let him down. And I realized that even when life feels impossible, you have to keep moving forward. Because you never know when things might change for the better." Daniel nodded, absorbing her words. "Thanks, Lily, for everything." She smiled, reaching out to squeeze his shoulder. "You're going to do amazing things, Daniel. I know it." As the mentorship program's first year drew to a close, Ethan organized a celebration to honor the progress of the mentees and the dedication of the mentors. The event was held in a community center, with families, local officials, and donors in attendance. Lily stood at the back of the room, watching as her mentees shared their stories with the audience. Pride swelled in her chest as she listened to them speak about their journeys, their dreams, and the people who had helped them along the way. When Ethan took the stage, he began by thanking everyone who had contributed to the program's success. Then, to Lily's surprise, he called her up. "This program wouldn't exist without Lily Harper," he said, his voice steady and warm. "Her compassion, resilience, and dedication have inspired all of us. She's proof that one person can make a difference." The room erupted in applause as Lily joined him on stage, her cheeks flushing. Ethan handed her a plaque, engraved with her name and the words, "For outstanding dedication and impact." As she looked out at the smiling faces, she realized something profound. She wasn't just surviving anymore, she was thriving. And in helping others find their way, she had found her own. Lily clutched the plaque tightly, tears stinging her eyes. This wasn't just a new chapter in her life, it was a whole new book. Winds of change. The days following the celebration brought a new sense of clarity to Lily. While she was immensely proud of what the mentorship program had accomplished, she couldn't ignore the gnawing feeling that there was still so much left to do. The stories shared at the event revealed not only the successes, but also the deep-rooted struggles faced by many in their community. It was clear that this was only the beginning. One evening, Lily and Ethan sat in the conference room after the other mentors and mentees had gone home. The city lights twinkled through the large windows, casting a soft glow across the table where they reviewed the program's quarterly reports. "I keep thinking about the kids we haven't reached yet," Lily said, breaking the silence. Ethan glanced up from his laptop. "You're not the only one. We've had inquiries from other parts of the city, even neighboring towns. People are noticing what we're doing here." Lily leaned back in her chair, her mind racing. "We could expand, couldn't we? Partner with more schools, create satellite programs in other areas." Ethan nodded thoughtfully. "We could, but expansion means more resources, more staff, and more time. It's not something we can rush." "I know," Lily said, "but it feels like the right direction. These kids, they deserve more." Ethan smiled, a mixture of admiration and determination in his expression. "You're right. Let's start planning." Over the next few months, Lily found herself in uncharted territory. She wasn't just mentoring anymore. She was helping design the blueprint for the program's expansion. It was challenging and exhilarating, and she often spent late nights poring over proposals and brainstorming ideas with Ethan and the other mentors. One of their first steps was to establish partnerships with local businesses and community leaders. Lily spearheaded these efforts, using her natural empathy and sincerity to connect with people. She met with shop owners, school principals, and even a few city officials, sharing the program's mission and the impact it had already made. To her surprise, many were eager to help. A local bookstore agreed to host a weekly tutoring session, providing free materials for the students. A chain of grocery stores offered to sponsor meals for the mentees and their families, and a tech company donated laptops to support the kids' education. But not every meeting went smoothly. During a pitch to a prominent investor, Lily faced sharp skepticism. "You're asking for a lot," the man said, leaning back in his leather chair. "How do I know this isn't just another feel-good initiative that fizzles out in a year?" Lily swallowed her frustration, meeting his gaze. "Because this isn't about feeling good. It's about changing lives. We've already proven we can make a difference. All we need is the chance to scale that impact." Her passion seemed to reach him. He didn't commit on the spot, but a week later, he called with an offer to fund their next phase of growth. As the program expanded, so did Lily's responsibilities. She found herself juggling multiple roles: mentor, coordinator, public speaker, and problem solver. It was exhausting, but every time she saw a child's life change for the better, it reminded her why she had taken this path. Her mentees continued to grow as well. Maya had not only won a writing competition, but had also started volunteering to teach creative writing to younger kids. Marcus was thriving in his apprenticeship at the auto shop and had even been offered a part-time job. And Emily had discovered a passion for graphic design, earning a scholarship to a summer program at a local art school. One evening, Lily received a text from Marcus. "Can you come to the shop tomorrow? I have something to show you." Curious, she agreed. The next afternoon, she arrived at the shop to find Marcus beaming with pride. "Check it out," he said, leading her to a corner where an old beat-up motorcycle had been transformed into a sleek, polished machine. "You did this?" Lily asked, her jaw dropping. "Yeah," Marcus said, grinning. "It took weeks, but I finally finished it. My boss says I've got real talent." Lily felt tears prick her eyes. "Marcus, this is incredible. I'm so proud of you." He shrugged, but the pride in his expression was unmistakable. "Couldn't have done it without you." Despite the successes, challenges remained. Some kids struggled to stay committed, and Lily often found herself dealing with crises that pulled at her heart. One of the newer mentees, a boy named Jamal, had been skipping sessions and getting into trouble at school. Lily decided to visit him at home, hoping to understand what was going on. Jamal lived in a small apartment with his grandmother, who greeted Lily warmly but looked exhausted. "He's a good boy," she said, wringing her hands. "But he's angry. He misses his parents." Lily found Jamal in his room, headphones on and eyes fixed on the ceiling. She knocked gently on the doorframe. "Hey, Jamal," she said. "Can we talk?" He sighed but sat up. "What's the point? You're just going to tell me I need to do better." "I'm not here to lecture you," Lily said, sitting on the edge of his bed. "I just want to know what's going on." For a moment, he didn't say anything. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, he said, "I don't see the point of trying. Nothing's going to change." Lily's heart ached for him. "Jamal, I know it feels that way now. But I promise you, things can get better. You're smart and capable, and there's a whole world of possibilities out there for you. You just have to let us help." It took time, but slowly, Jamal began to trust her. He started showing up to sessions again, and Lily worked with him to set small, achievable goals. By the end of the year, the mentorship program had grown beyond anything Lily had imagined. They now had 3 satellite locations, each staffed by passionate mentors who shared her dedication. At the program's annual gala, Ethan once again called Lily to the stage. This time, she wasn't surprised. She had grown into her role, and though she still battled self-doubt, she knew she was making a difference. "Lily Harper isn't just a mentor or a coordinator," Ethan said to the crowd. "She's a force of nature. Her vision, compassion, and determination have transformed this program and countless lives." As the audience applauded, Lily felt a deep sense of fulfillment. This journey had been far from easy, but it had been worth every struggle. And as she looked out at the sea of faces, mentors, mentees, supporters, and friends, she realized that this was only the beginning. Together, they were building a brighter future, one step at a time. Seeds of a movement. The applause from the gala still echoed in Lily's mind as she sat at her kitchen table that night. The event had been a resounding success, with donors pledging enough funds to sustain the mentorship program for years to come. Yet even with this victory, Lily's mind refused to rest. She opened her notebook, the same one where she had written her doubts months ago, and began to jot down new ideas. Expand the program to rural areas, partner with vocational schools, online resources for kids who can't attend in person. Her pen raced across the page, her thoughts fueled by a growing realization. This wasn't just about her city or her story anymore. This was the start of something much bigger. A week later, Lily received an email that stopped her in her tracks. It was from a representative of a national nonprofit organization focused on youth empowerment. They had heard about her program through the gala's media coverage and wanted to discuss the possibility of collaborating. Excitement mixed with apprehension as she shared the news with Evan. "This could be huge," she said, pacing the small conference room. "But it's also terrifying. What if we lose control of what makes the program special?" Ethan leaned back in his chair, his expression thoughtful. "Partnerships can be tricky, but they can also open doors we can't on our own. Let's hear them out." The meeting was scheduled for the following week, and Lily prepared relentlessly. When the day arrived, she and Ethan were greeted by a polished, professional team who were clearly impressed by the work they had already done. "We're not here to take over," the nonprofit's director assured them. "We want to amplify what you've started. With your permission, we'd like to pilot your program in 3 other cities and see how it scales." Lily exchanged a glance with Ethan. This was the kind of opportunity she had dreamed about, but it came with risks. "We'd want to ensure the core values of the program remain intact," she said firmly. "This isn't just about mentorship. It's about building trust, community, and resilience." The director nodded. "And that's exactly why we're interested. Your program is unique because of the personal touch you've brought to it. We don't want to change that. We want to replicate it." After hours of discussion, they reached an agreement. The nonprofit would fund and manage the pilot programs, while Lily and Ethan would oversee the training and development of new mentors to ensure consistency. Over the next few months, Lily found herself traveling to cities she had never visited, meeting with community leaders, and training new mentors. It was exhausting but exhilarating. One city in particular stood out, a struggling industrial town with high unemployment and limited resources. The kids there reminded Lily of the mentees she had first started working with, their eyes filled with a mixture of hope and skepticism. During one of her visits, she met a girl named Tasha, who had been referred to the program by her school counselor. Tasha was quiet, almost withdrawn, but there was a spark in her that Lily recognized immediately. "Do you like to draw?" Lily asked, noticing the sketches on the corner of Tasha's notebook. Tasha shrugged. "It's just something I do when I'm bored." Lily smiled. "It looks like more than that. Would you like to share some of your work?" Hesitant at first, Tasha eventually showed Lily a collection of intricate designs, portraits, landscapes, and abstract patterns that displayed remarkable talent. "These are amazing," Lily said. "Have you ever thought about pursuing art as a career?" Tasha shook her head. "People around here don't do stuff like that. It's not realistic." Lily leaned forward. "Maybe not everyone does. But that doesn't mean you can't. If it's something you love, you owe it to yourself to try." From that day on, Tasha began attending every session, her confidence growing as she received encouragement and guidance. By the end of the year, she had applied to an art program at a local college, something she had once believed was out of reach. Back home, Lily continued to juggle her growing responsibilities. Jake, now in his final year of college, often stopped by to help with administrative tasks. "You've come a long way, you know," he said one evening as they worked side by side. "So have you," she replied, smiling. Jake grinned. "Yeah, but you're changing the world." Lily laughed, one kid at a time. But Jake shook his head. "It's bigger than that now. What you've built is a movement, Lily. People are paying attention." He wasn't exaggerating. The mentorship program had begun to attract national recognition. Articles were written about it. Invitations to speak at conferences poured in, and Lily even received an award from the governor for her contributions to the community. Yet, despite the accolades, Lily remained grounded. She knew that the heart of the program wasn't in the spotlight, but in the quiet, personal moments. The breakthroughs, the small victories, the connections that changed lives. One evening, as Lily walked through the mentorship center, she overheard a conversation between 2 new mentees. "I didn't think this would be worth it," one of them admitted. "But it's different here. They actually care." Lily felt a lump rise in her throat. She thought back to that night at Rosie's diner, when she had handed her last sandwich to a boy who had needed it more than she did. She had no idea then how much that single act of kindness would ripple outward, touching so many lives. She stood there for a moment, taking it all in. The laughter, the energy, the hope that filled the room. It was everything she had ever wanted to create. And as she walked out into the cool night air, she knew one thing for certain. This was only the beginning. The legacy grows. The mentorship program's impact had extended far beyond what Lily Harper could have imagined. Over the past 2 years, it had blossomed into a national initiative, transforming communities one child at a time. Lily had become a sought-after figure in the world of youth empowerment, but her heart remained firmly rooted in the stories of the kids she worked with every day. On a crisp autumn morning, Lily found herself back in the small community where it had all begun. The original mentorship center, once a modest room with mismatched chairs, was now a vibrant hub filled with resources, bustling with mentors and mentees. She smiled as she walked through the door, greeted by the familiar sound of laughter and the sight of kids working on projects, reading, or just talking with their mentors. "Lily," a voice called out. She turned to see Emily, one of her earliest mentees, now a confident young woman with a portfolio tucked under her arm. "Emily, look at you," Lily exclaimed, pulling her into a hug. Emily beamed. "I just got accepted into my dream design school. I wanted you to be the first to know." Tears welled up in Lily's eyes. "I'm so proud of you, Emily. You've worked so hard for this." Emily shrugged, a playful grin on her face. "Couldn't have done it without you." That afternoon, Lily held a meeting with her core team, mentors who had been with her since the early days. They discussed new initiatives, including a partnership with a tech company to offer coding workshops and the creation of an online platform to connect mentors with kids in remote areas. "What about the rural expansion?" Ethan asked, reviewing the notes. "It's coming along," Lily replied. "We've got 3 pilot programs up and running. The feedback has been great so far, but we'll need more funding to scale." Ethan nodded. "Leave that to me. I've got a few investors lined up who are interested." As the meeting wrapped up, Lily's phone buzzed with a notification. She glanced at the screen and froze. "What is it?" Ethan asked, noticing her expression. "It's an invitation," Lily said slowly, "to speak at the United Nations Youth Summit." The room fell silent. "Lily, that's incredible." Maya, now a mentor herself, said, her eyes wide with excitement. Lily smiled, though she felt a familiar mix of excitement and doubt. "It's a huge honor, but also a huge responsibility. What if I don't measure up?" Ethan leaned forward, his tone reassuring. "Lily, you've spent years proving that you're more than capable. This is your chance to inspire on a global level." In the weeks leading up to the summit, Lily worked tirelessly to craft her speech. She wanted to convey not only the success of the mentorship program, but also the lessons she had learned along the way. The night before the event, she sat in her hotel room, staring at the final draft. Her mind drifted back to the beginning, the night she had given her last sandwich to a hungry boy. That single act of kindness had set off a chain reaction that had led to this moment. Her thoughts were interrupted by a knock at the door. It was Ethan, holding 2 cups of coffee. "Nervous?" he asked, handing her one. "Terrified," she admitted, taking the sip. "You've got this," he said. "Just speak from the heart. That's what you've always done best." The next day, Lily stood on the stage of the UN Youth Summit, her heart pounding as she looked out at the audience. Delegates from around the world, youth leaders, and policymakers filled the room. Cameras broadcast the event to millions. She took a deep breath and began. "When I was 19, I was working as a waitress, barely making ends meet. One night, a boy walked into the diner where I worked. He was cold, hungry, and alone. I didn't have much to give, but I gave him the last sandwich we had. I didn't know it then, but that moment would change my life. And his, forever." She paused, letting her words sink in. That boy's name was Daniel. He became the first mentee in what would later grow into a nationwide mentorship program. Today, Daniel is studying to become a social worker, determined to give back to the community that once gave him a chance. The audience was silent, hanging on her every word. "I've learned that change doesn't start with grand gestures. It starts with small acts of kindness, with listening, with believing in someone when no one else does. Every child has potential, but not every child has opportunity. That's what we're here to change." As she finished her speech, The room erupted in applause. Lily felt a wave of emotion wash over her, a mixture of relief, pride, and gratitude. Back home, Lily returned to the mentorship center, where she was greeted with cheers and hugs from her team and mentees. "You're famous now," Jake teased, holding up a newspaper with her photo on the front page. Lily laughed. "Hardly. But if it means more people hear about the program, I'll take it." Over the next few months, the mentorship program saw an influx of support. Donations, volunteers, and inquiries from communities eager to adopt the model. Lily worked tirelessly to ensure the expansion stayed true to its roots, always prioritizing the kids and their needs. Years later, the mentorship program had become a global movement, with chapters in over 20 countries. Lily stepped back from the day-to-day operations, focusing instead on training new leaders to carry the vision forward. One evening, as she walked through the original mentorship center, now a bustling headquarters, she found herself face to face with a young boy who reminded her of Daniel. "Are you Lily Harper?" he asked, his eyes wide with awe. She smiled. "I am. What's your name?" "Jamal," he said. "I just joined the program. My mentor said I should thank you." Lily crouched down to his level, her heart full. "You don't have to thank me, Jamal. Just promise me one thing." "What's that?" he asked. "Never stop believing in yourself," she said, "because I believe in you." As Jamal grinned and ran off to join his group, Lily felt a profound sense of peace. The program wasn't just hers anymore. It belonged to the countless lives it had touched and would continue to touch for generations. And as she stood there, watching the next chapter unfold, she knew the legacy would live on.